The take and give of Trump's trade policies and safety of Ohio State Fair rides. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jesse Balmert, State House reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer, Joe Ingles, State House reporter for Ohio Public Radio, Sam Gresham of Common Cause Ohio, and Mark Weaver, Republican strategist. Ohio farmers feeling the pinch of tariffs on soybeans, pork, and other products got a bit of good news this week. The Trump administration promises $12 billion in aid to farmers adversely affected by retaliatory tariffs by China and others. Trump says in the long run, farmers will benefit as other countries renegotiate trade deals.
They don't want to have those tariffs put on them. They're all coming to see us, and the farmers will be the biggest beneficiary. Watch. We're opening up markets. You watch what's going to happen. Just be a little patient.
To ease the pain for patient farmers, the federal government will pay assistance directly to farmers who have lost sales and purchased crops and products to give to food banks. Jesse Balmert, so what's the farmers' reaction? Are they willing to be patient? Do they like the assistance that's coming from the feds?
I think generally the talking point from the farmers this week has been that they wanted trade, not aid, and that's something that they've told their members of Congress and senators, and something that Republican Senator Rob Portman had brought up specifically. I know the Ohio soybean farmers in particular are going to be really hurt by these, the tariffs, especially with China, and have come out opposed to them and are saying that this is going to affect both their industry and everyone who supports rural farming in Ohio. And so I think they would rather see the underlying problem fixed rather than get this assistance right now.
What is the fix, Mark? I mean, this is a temporary solution. Rob Portman says is a temporary solution to this trade dispute, but with trade wars come winners and losers, at least on a temporary basis.
It's true. You have to give the president credit. The president ran on the issue that our economic system is out of whack because many countries are taking advantage of trade with America. He said he was going to do something about it. He's done it. Some people have been critical of it. I'm not a fan of tariffs. He's taken on some criticism, but this week we saw the first fruit where maybe these countries are changing their attitudes towards the U.S. He may have built up some bargaining leverage that wasn't there before.
The European Union said they would import more soybeans from the United States. Yeah. Sam Sherrod-Brown, he supports these tariffs. He's not really saying much about the aid, but he supports the tariffs on China, especially as far as steel goes.
I'm not sure about the tariffs, and I'll be flat out honest. You create your own problem, then you come up with a solution to solve it. How much sense does that make? We sat here in this room and said that soybeans, among all other crops, would be affected. Now, there's a problem. China takes more soybeans than any other country in the world from us. So there is no substitute for China. Are we going to bring China to its knees and do what we want to do? I don't think this is the proper approach. I feel for the farmers because I think this is just the beginning. This is not the end, and no solution is in sight.
Joe, any regrets on farmers? I assume many of them, the rural areas, tended to vote for Donald Trump. Many of them likely voted for Donald Trump, who promised aggressive trade policies. Any regrets on their part?
I think some of them are sitting there questioning this policy, but I think in general, if you listen to the farmers, they say that they still think that, Donald Trump is getting the nation on the right track and that this will kind of solve itself, but they wish that, that there was some change right now on the tariffs that would help them out.
Jesse, is $12 billion enough? An Ohio State study says that the farmers would lose soybean farmers would lose half of their income, which comes up to about $250 million over 1 year, just in Ohio alone.
I am not sure how much is going to be enough, and this is obviously a number they came up with and felt like it was at least a goodwill offering to the farmers and to kind of offset some of their losses. Whether it would be enough, like I said, I think they would prefer a solution rather than this stopgap.
Mark, is this aid or is this a bailout?
Well, it depends on who you ask, right? Most farmers would prefer to be able to grow and sell their crops. And so those are in need want aid. Those who are critical of programs like this call them bailouts. We mentioned Sherrod Brown before. This puts him in a difficult position, cognitive dissonance, if you will. He is a fair trader, and he's talked about that for years. President Trump is now advancing some policies like that, and it pains Sherrod Brown to compliment anything that this president does.
Yeah, I support the administration's or the federal government's policies. They don't name
Yeah,
Trump.
he says the T-word tariff, but he won't say the T-word Trump.
But if you give soybean farmers and pork farmers assistance, then what about, the shellfish farm or fishermen or other industries that are affected by tariffs down the road?
Well, and that's the argument. And I'm a free trader, and that's the argument I consistently make, which is let the market decide these decisions. Because once you begin to make changes in an economic system, you have to wind up making other changes to resolve the problems that come from it. It's a little bit like whack-a-mole, and as a result, we're seeing our president play that. Having said that, this week's news suggests that he may be getting leverage we didn't have.
The other part of this, too, is suppliers will find different sources, and they'll find relationships in those sources long term. Some of these farmers have had 2 or 3 generations of relationships with companies in Europe and in China. All of a sudden, you're disrupted that. And the final point on that, confidence in the system, whether something else is going to occur again politically to turn off a source of their supply. I mean, the whole idea of this, I don't know who gave him the idea. And Mark, I heard what you said. There are a lot of things you may promise as a candidate, but when you get in the office, you may get more information that says to you, that may not be a good idea.
But Trump since the 80s has
Yeah.
been saying we've been on the bad end of trade deals. So one policy where he's been consistent. It's
Well,
this
actually,
one.
many of the areas he's been criticized on are for doing things he promised he would do. There's no doubt what you're saying is right, Sam. Many politicians get in office and say, I shouldn't have promised that. Largely, that's created a climate where Donald Trump could get elected, where he said, I'm going to do it differently, and then comes in and does it differently, and then ironically gets criticized for it.
The thing that we got to remember is the Ohio Chamber of Commerce and business people for years and years and years have said the thing that bothers business the most is uncertainty, and this has put some uncertainty in
fair.
the situation.
That's a fair point.
All right, 1 week to go before we know who will fill out the rest of Pat Tiberi's congressional term. Democrat Danny O'Connor and Republican Troy Balderson are looking to replace Tiberi, who left Congress last winter. Kyle Kondik, the veteran political prognosticator of Sabato's Crystal Ball, says the race has moved from leans Republican to a toss-up. Kondik points to early voting trends as one reason for his change. O'Connor, meanwhile, ran into a bit of trouble on national TV this week when he was asked about his refusal to support House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Who are you going to vote for Speaker?
I don't know who's going to run, but I know
Pelosi's running for re-election.
We
She
need
said
change. We need change on both
So
sides.
you're not voting for Pelosi?
No.
Well, how are you going to help the Democrats get the 218 they need to win the House? You have to be one of the votes.
Yeah, we
So what are
need
you
to
going to do? If you're one of the 218, they need to take control of the House, and the vote on the floor is Pelosi. What are you going to do?
We need leadership.
And you
on
don't
both
get
sides.
control of the House.
Well, we need to
If
have
it's a
control of the
decisive vote,
House.
would you vote against Pelosi?
We
If it's
need-
decisive.
We need new
You're
leadership on
dodging
both
it.
sides.
You know
of the
you
aisle.
have to decide this. Just
But
tell me you know you have to decide it.
No, but we need new leadership.
No, just tell me you
the
know.
old ways aren't working.
No, you know that for the Democrats can get control, you have to have 218 members of the House
Absolutely.
vote for the candidate of the Democratic Party for Speaker.
I
Can
would
you do
support
that?
whoever the Democratic Party puts
Thank you.
forward.
Danny O'Connor.
Some hardball there. If you did not catch that, Matthews got O'Connor to basically admit that he could vote for Pelosi if it was basically between her and the Republican for Speaker. Republicans still pounced, saying O'Connor went back on his promise not to support Pelosi. Joe Ingles, first to this question. How much do voters in the 12th Congressional District really care about Nancy Pelosi or whoever's going to be the Speaker Jim Jordan, who's going to be possibly the Speaker on the Republican side?
That's a good question. I'd love to know the answer to that, Mike. I'm trying to figure that out myself. I don't hear people talking about Nancy Pelosi. I don't hear people talking so much about Jim Jordan, although I hear a little more of that just because it's in the news every day when
He's
you
from
turn
Ohio,
it on and,
yeah.
it's from the paper. But, the thing is that, these kind of questions, this line of questioning is exactly why we have problems as reporters getting newsmakers to come in and talk to us.
Good point.
And I think, I don't want to be critical of Chris Matthews. I know he's doing his job. I know he's trying to get an answer. But to have that taken out, in 2 or 3 seconds and portrayed as what he said you know, we've got to take it all in context.
If you listen carefully during that clip, you can hear a smacking sound in the background. Those are the aides of O'Connor smacking their hands against their heads because they realized that this is now the turning point in this race. The kind of voter who turns out in a special election tends to be your most partisan type of voter, and this is a Republican district. I can assure you, Republican partisans hate Nancy Pelosi. Independents just dislike her. Republican partisans hate her. O'Connor was running a good race. This is a pivot point. He's in trouble because of this.
I agree with Mark up to this point. I think O'Connor has run a surprisingly good race, and it was good up until this point. But then I have to go with Joe. He should have been prepared for this.
I agree.
Well, he was, but he wasn't prepared to get pressed 4 or 5 times.
Right.
He did say he would not vote for Pelosi, but then, you know, the
But
scenario.
Chris Matthews is that kind of interview.
Yeah.
When I prepare someone for that show, I let them know. And also, he's
That's
a former
right.
he's a former Democrat
He
Speaker of
loves
the
to
House. He
get
knows how
into
to
the
whip
weeds.
votes, man. He loves to push that.
And he
stuff.
pushes you, but you still, if you're going on his show, you still should be prepared for
We're on
all
the same
that.
page. I agree.
You know, you have a one-word answer, and you let it go.
Also this week, Donald Trump fully endorsed Troy Balderson, the Republican running in this district, tweeted out earlier this week that Troy Balderson has his full and total endorsement, and then again on Friday he's repeated that he has his full and total endorsement. Jesse Balmert, and guess that's in place of his half and kind of endorsement. Anyway, but how much does Donald Trump's endorsement help or hurt Troy Balderson in this district?
Well, double endorsement is twice as nice, I suppose. But I think it helps him. This is a district that went for Donald Trump by 11 percentage points, so a little bit more than the state average of 8 percentage points. It is a district where there are rural voters in addition to your kind of suburban northern Columbus suburbs up to Delaware County, which is just a consistent Republican stronghold. It's interesting that this race is competitive at all, given just how strong of a GOP district it is. But I think the president is still popular there. The one caveat to that being is there is some polling or prognosticating about educated suburban women being more likely to vote against Trump, and that is a demographic that is in the 12th district, perhaps more so than other parts of the state. And so those voters, and I think Danny O'Connor, the Democrat, is going after those voters, those people who might be a little concerned about Trump's tweets and his tone, and he's also going after those enthusiastic Democrats who can't stand Trump being in the White House.
If Republicans dislike Nancy Pelosi, Democrats certainly
No doubt
dislike
about it.
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Could this further energize Democratic
It
voters?
could. If O'Connor wins this race, it will be because of Democrat energy against Donald Trump. I frankly don't think there's enough to do that. And I also think this would not be getting our attention if it were election in the fall, which of course it will be again in the fall. Special elections get more attention because they're the only ones out there to cover. Having said that, I still think Balderson wins this race.
Yeah, but O'Connor's has already won. The Democrats have already won. They may lose the election, but they took a district with an 11-point plurality that Trump had and made it competitive. Come on.
We'll give them the moral victory and we'll take the seat.
Well, it's also
I was going to say that's true, but Tim Ryan came out earlier this year and said Democrats need to stop relying on moral victories. So
And
is
one
that
thing-
the same thing?
It ain't over yet.
One thing to look at, let's look at the numbers in the primary. Before Election Day, the Democratic absentee ballots were 50%, the Republicans were 43%. But then when you looked at it after Election Day and you saw the totals, then the Republicans had 51.7% and the Democrats had 43%.
Just in the primary?
So this was the primary this year. So when you're looking at those numbers, you've got to think, you know, maybe the Republicans haven't spoken yet. You know, we're seeing these early numbers, but it might not be all the story.
Republicans tend to vote on Election Day.
Right.
There are a lot more candidates in that primary, too, for Republicans. But and this is the first game of a doubleheader. We're going to do it all again in the fall. Ohio voters in the fall will decide whether to change the Constitution to go easier on low-level drug offenders. Issue 1 would lower penalties for drug possession from felonies to misdemeanors. That means people convicted of just possessing drugs would face little or no prison time. The proposed amendment also would allow people already convicted as felons for these crimes to ask the offenses be reclassified as misdemeanors. That means some serving time in prison could be released. Mark Weaver, you're a prosecutor, have worked in the Attorney General's office. Is this a good idea?
I don't think so. First of all, most people who are drug addicted don't go to prison. The people who go to prison under the current system tend to be dealers or people who have screwed up and offended multiple times. This comes to us from California, where it was promised for great results. There's been very few results from California.
How long
on
has it
this.
been in California?
It's been a few years now, and the results have just not been that good. We have so many good drug courts in our common pleas courts, which is where felonies are heard in Ohio. To move these down into the municipal courts, where misdemeanors are heard, you won't have access to these great drug courts where there are these relationships with treatment places. The prosecutors I know will be voting no on this issue.
Yeah, but there are lots of people who are in prison for low-level drug crimes who are spending a whole lot of time.
Oh, very few. If you simply have possessed drugs, you won't, under current system, you will not go to prison because it's an F4 and F5. You're not supposed to go to prison.
Yeah, but
you're selling drugs, you may.
Today, that's true, but there are still people
I
in
hear that.
prison
Under old sentencing
under the
schemes?
old
Yeah,
sentencing
I hear you.
structure
Yeah.
who are in there for a long period of
This
time.
addresses the current one, though, and it's
Well,
a
there's some
myth to-
retroactivity in this.
It does, but it's a myth to suggest that people who get caught with heroin, for example, go to prison. They simply don't. The first choice is always to get them to treatment.
Users, dealers.
Yes,
do.
exactly. Well, and I would suggest you dealers should. Dealers are people who are essentially killing people. They
Okay,
are
but do
party
you
to killing somebody.
disagree with the retroactive aspect on that whole population of people who came through during the so-called war on
If
drugs?
it's going to be changed, it should be changed retroactively, but this particular change is not a good amendment to this Constitution.
This is an amendment to the Constitution, though some would argue this should be done by state law.
I think a lot of people argue it should be done by state law, especially state lawmakers,
Yes.
of course. But
They're not really acting too quickly on this, though.
It's true. I think a lot of times, though, like redistricting, like medical marijuana, the casinos, these are things that were brought to the lawmakers first, and then they didn't address them in a timely enough manner for people gathering signatures, and then they went to it. I haven't heard a lot about reducing felonies to misdemeanors on drug cases in the Ohio General Assembly. Like, it's just not an issue that's come up a lot recently, and there have been some changes over the past several years, generally making those lower level offenders more likely to go to your county jail than to prison.
Have we turned a corner, Joe, on how we prosecute these drug crimes? I mean, part of it is the cost of prisons. People got tired of paying for prisons,
Right.
for jail cells for folks with low-level offenses, and better understanding of how addiction works and things like that work. Have we turned a corner?
Maybe in some ways, but I can almost see the ads come in November, October, when the heat of the season is here. It's going to be tough on crime, and this is a softie kind of thing, and do you really want this person living next to you, and they'll pull out some worst case scenario. I can see that ad being out there, and I don't know, theoretically people can say one thing, but then when they have to put it into action or think about it in the practical terms, they think another way. And I think we could see that with this issue.
One thing that's different for sure is nearly every family knows someone who's addicted to opioids. It has changed the public discussion in a way that we've not seen in years in this country.
I really appreciated that addition. When white grandmothers became drug addicted, the whole idea of drugs and how people saw them changed, the whole paradigm. I am appreciative of that. But there's still a large part of the African American community that's still suffering with those old sentences for low-level drug offense. The component that I like most is to recast those sentences and get some of these people. I like the new drug court programs to move people into diversion program. I like all that. But there's a large part of the African American population that's still locked up in prisons under the old drug laws.
And as felons, in many places, you can't vote.
Right.
So if it's reduced to misdemeanor, you can vote. Tougher, perhaps loophole-free rules are coming to Ohio's payday lenders. The House this week approved a bill that caps short-term interest rates at 28%. While payday lenders got some concessions from lawmakers, they oppose this bill. They say it'll put them out of business. Governor Kasich says it looks like a good bill, and he says he'll likely sign it. Jesse, will this remove all loopholes? Can we guarantee it? Can we say this is the time?
Gosh, I'm sure they thought in 2008 they were removing all loopholes, and you saw how well that one worked out. But I do think lawmakers crafted this in such a way to force those people who are giving loans of less than $1,000, less than a year, to force them to to loan under this new law and under some of the restrictions that Ohioans already voted for and said that they wanted. There are some kind of consumer financial protection things in there that if you're getting a loan for 90 days or fewer, they would have to look at the payments and fee structures compared to like what you can pay back. And so I think it will be harder to get around. I think that is one of the payday lending industry's concerns with this bill.
Are they going to go out of business? They say they're going to go out of business.
No, they're not going to go out of business. But the economy has shaped this segment of people in a way that they're going to continue to need this money. They're going to continue to go to these sources because if you don't make $17.95, meeting all your material responsibilities in Franklin County is difficult to do. Now, if you go look at that number, the majority of low-wage workers in Franklin County make less than $17.95.
Is this a proper role for government?
I don't
with
think
interest
it is.
rates as high as 500%, according to Pew. Is it?
This comes down to whether you trust people to make decisions that are best for their own life. Whether we're prohibiting alcohol 100 years ago, people found a way to buy it and people found a way to sell it. Whether we're jerry-rigging fireworks laws in Ohio, people find a way to sell it and people find a way to buy it. The reason why loopholes exist is because there's a demand and there's a supply, and there will be loopholes moving forward on this issue as well.
It used to be called usury, and people called it usury because the laws prevented you from doing it. And these people were not exploited legally. Now, they were exploited illegally by people giving them gifts. I don't find government's role is improper. Yeah, we have free markets, but there are regulations and there are controls and there are rules.
The same people you're advocating for, but who are living in Franklin County having trouble making ends meet, I trust them to make decisions about when they need a short-term loan to be able to go and get it, as opposed to going to some organized crime figure to get a very dangerous short-term loan.
All right, let's get to our last topic. The Ohio State Fair opened this week as people admire the butter sculptures not far from their minds as last year's accident that killed one person and seriously injured several others. Hours after it was inspected, one of the arms of the Fireball ride broke off in mid-flight. Pictures from before the accident showed a crack caused by corrosion, which was missed by inspectors and ride operators. State Fair officials promise increased vigilance to ensure safety, but safety advocates say the state and the thrill ride industry have done little to change the system to prevent future accidents. Sam, question. Are you going to get on the ride this year? How confident are you that this won't happen again and they've taken the steps to do it?
I'm not getting on the ride.
Were you going to get on the ride before?
No.
Okay.
We want to see you go down that big slide.
I'm not
Sam.
at this age. I've learned there's a thing called law of probability, and you don't know what the math is on that particular apparatus. So no, I'm not getting on it. But I think this points out something. I think it points out the fallacy. And when people look at government's responsibilities, I think government has a responsibility to protect people. It needs to do a good job. But with 8 inspectors for
3,700 rides.
yeah, how do you think that's going to work? That's not going to work.
No one's, I mean, with this, there are lawsuits against the operator. The state can't be sued. The manufacturer apparently is exempt because it was in operation for 10 years. Will anybody really be held accountable for that accident, Mark?
It's hard to say. There's several different places you could sue. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody gets through with something. Sam, this is something you and I agree on. This is one of those health, safety, and welfare things their government does have involved. There ought to be inspection of these rides. And although I'm not a huge rider of the rides, I love the fair, probably now's the time to go, given all the inspectors that came in ahead of the rollout. If you ever want to pick the safest time to go on the rides, little insider's tip, this is probably it.
They are doing more spot inspections at the state fair. They're going to look deeper into the manufacturing records, but Tyler's Law, which would have called for more state involvement, went nowhere.
It's going nowhere, and I mean, they've had some hearings on it and a little bit of action, but it's still not getting the traction that you would have thought. And I think a lot of the lawmakers that back that had hoped that it would have been put in place by now because they could have rolled it out and said, here, look, something's being done, but that's not there.
Tyler is the young man who died, and that's what
Right.
the law is named for him.
I think this is another example of where the little guy gets smashed and the big guy gets what they want.
Okay. Let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Mark Weaver, you're up first.
This year, everyone will wonder whether there will be a blue wave election in Congress. That's one of the things we talk about. But historically, we know that when unemployment is as low as it is now, There's never been a wave election with unemployment quite this low. So if it happens, it would be the first time.
Sam.
I think there's a leakage occurring in the Republican wall in support of Donald Trump. There are just too many pieces of paper flying around, slapping people in the face. After a while, there will be a leakage. This 40% that he supports will dissipate, and the 60% that opposes him will grow.
Joe.
I would like to use this time to actually say I miss debates. I would like to see the candidates get in there this fall and debate. There is an Ohio Debate Commission that's trying to come up with some, and Mike and I have worked with them, they're trying to come up with some ways to do that, and I would encourage voters and candidates, everyone, to ask hard questions of lawmakers and potential lawmakers.
And Jesse.
One entertaining moment this week was when Ken Harbaugh, the Democrat who is running for the 7th district against Bob Gibbs, he went to the Knox County Fair and participated in their truck jumping like competition. He ended up with a bloody nose, so you can check out the footage of Harbaugh's wild ride.
Harbaugh gets applause in Ohio. The key to the special election in 10 days in the 12th district will be the margin of victory. If Troy Balderson wins by a lot, the race will likely be over in November. If it's even close, if Danny O'Connor wins by a little or he keeps it close, then the fight will definitely be on for November, regardless of who wins in August. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out on Facebook, where we'll put a video of that Harbaugh truck jumping on our Facebook page. Also, we're on Twitter, and you can see all that at our website, wosu.org/COTR. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.